Hi everyone, this is Sebastiano of CodyHouse.co. Okay, so in this quick video, we are going to take a look together at the spacing system within the CodyHouse framework. So this is the spacing.scss file, and first of all, we want to focus on the spacing scale. So the spacing scale is a set of non-linear values obtained by combining a space unit, which in this case is 1m, with a ratio or a multiplier, and in this case we are applying the Fibonacci sequence, and we do that to obtain a set of non-linear values that then we store into spacing variables, as you can see right here, and then we have the component padding, but we'll talk about this later in the video. Okay, so this is how we generate the spacing scale. And let me show you how to take fully advantage of the spacing scale. So we are looking at one of our components. This is the model window. And if we check the code inside the SCSS tab, we can see that on some of the elements, like for example, the model header right here, and the other elements like for example, the body and the footer. So we apply the spacing variables when we need to define padding. It's not just padding, it's anytime you need to define any kind of spacing, so it's ideal to use, if you're using our framework, one of the spacing variables. So why is it useful? If we take a look at the model window right here, if we resize the browser, now you can see that the model window is responsive, so it's smaller, on the smaller screens, and it becomes bigger if we resize the window. But if we check the code once again, we have no media queries here. So we are not we're not using a media query to say, hey, just increase the values of the margins, increase the values of the paddings, and so on. So it's like this change is already within the spacing variables. So there is something which is affecting the spacing variables so that they become bigger at a specific breakpoint. So let me show you why. So that happens because the spacing variables use relative units. Specifically, they use m units. So we know that because of their nature, m units are affected by the font size of the elements they are applied to, which means that if we change the font size, we change also the value of the m units. Now, into the chapter about typography, we explained that we change the body font size at a specific media query just to increase the values of all the typography elements so that we can affect the responsiveness of all our typography elements by editing a single variable, which is right here. You can see here, we are saying that at the medium breakpoint, we want to increase the fonts, the body font size. So the text base size is basically the body font size from 1m to 1.25m. And we are also increasing the space unit as well. So, but let me just break this down. When you change the text base size, you're affecting typography. But because spacing is affected by the font size, you are affecting also the spacing system, which means that any variable in use in your system becomes bigger. Now, if you want to change the spacing variables without affecting typography, then you can edit the space unit variable, which is right here. So for example, if I comment this one, you can see the margins and the paddings of the elements becomes slightly smaller. And the same happens if we comment and basically we remove the text base size from the equation. Not just the typography becomes smaller, but also the spacing is affected as well. So this is why it's very powerful to use a system like this one, where you can in most cases forget about adding media queries, because everything is taken care of by using just a few variables, like these two variables right here. Now, if we go back to the spacing file, there are just a few notes before we end this video. First of all, we have the component padding. So this is another variable where we apply one of the values of the spacing scale. So how do you use this variable? Okay, so this is useful when we consider the main blocky containers of our layout. So we are not talking about atomic, very small components, but the main containers of a page, like for example header and similar components. Sometimes you forget the padding values that you are applying. And you want to keep the padding consistent across components, like for example in this case. You want this space here to remain the same. So instead of searching through your code for the spacing value that you have used, you can just apply the component padding variable so that you are sure you're using the same padding for these kind of components. And one final note is about the utility classes right here. Which complete the spacing file. So we define utility classes for the margin top and the margin bottom. And why is that? If we go back to another example on CodyHouse, for example, we have a component, the newsletter component. So why is it a good idea to include, to use utility classes for defining the margins top and bottom of the components? Because components are used in different pages and they may need different values for the margins. So if you do include the margins into the code of the component, then you have to overwrite those values, and it's really difficult to maintain a system like this one. But if you have utility classes instead, you can just use the component without any margin, and then you can apply the utility classes so that you can use different margin values whenever you use the component on a different page. So you're free to set the margins whatever you like without having to overwrite classes and let's say create more complexity when it comes to maintainability. Okay, so that's all about our spacing system. Hope you guys found the video helpful, and thanks for watching.